It's a great opportunity again at the KDR TV studios that we are bringing you guests from Kenya. We have the Tugutuke group, and we have a senatorial candidate from Busia County, Mr. Itela. And then we've got Lillian, who is the communications director at Tugutuke. And then we've got Mr. David Kabeberi, who is the advisor to the council of Tugutuke. So let me usher them in so that we can start the discussion for today immediately. Thank you very much. Hello, gentlemen and lady. Welcome to KDR TV show.
Good evening to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we'll definitely start with our sister, Lillian. We would like to know who is Lillian. So this is your first show with KDR TV show or KDR TV radio and television. So please introduce yourself so that our people can know you. Go ahead, Sister Lillian.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ben. So my name is Lillian, as you can see, Lillian Okado, and I'm here on behalf of the Tugutuke movement. So I'm actually a member of the movement, and I'm heading the communications for the movement. My background is actually in communications, and I'm also an entrepreneur. So I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you very much. So let's move to Bwana David Kabeberi. Go ahead, Bwana David.
Thank you, Ben, and good evening, everybody, or good morning, where it's morning. David Kabeberi. I am a retired accountant. I have been in the accounting profession for about 40 years now. Currently, I'm working with Tugutuke as an advisor to the council. At some stage later, I hope we'll be able to explain what Tugutuke is, but really glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now let's move to Busia, where we have Bwana Hilary Itela. Go ahead, Bwana Hilary.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are at. Hilary Odera Itela is my name. I am the ODM senatorial candidate for Busia County, and I'm happy to be part and parcel of this great panel, and more than happy and willing to answer questions and any clarity that's required. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So first things first. So what is Tugutuke to start with? Bwana David.
So Ben, Tugutuke is a movement started by a number of young concerned Kenyans who were largely concerned about the growing apathy towards elections in our country and the extent to which younger people were seeming less and less interested in voting, less and less interested in affairs of government, and less interested in coming together as the people and being in government. So Tugutuke, after a series of examination, found that one of the big problems that we have with the Kenyan elections and Kenyan politics and Kenyan leadership is the lack of accountability, the lack of mechanisms by which elected representatives can account back, can answer back to their voters while they're in office. Because of this, people tend to go to parliament and parliament to the assemblies, to Senate, at the end of the day to serve their own personal interests. It became a big concern that we as voters actually acknowledge this and have not done anything about it. We determined that the difficulty and the problem was the lack of organization. The Kenyan voters really all appreciate the problem, but lack the organization with which to take the action required. And so Tugutuke got together and is trying to create that organization where voters can vote in only those candidates who agree to be directly accountable to them and to hold them accountable after their election. So we'll also create the mechanism using modern technology to monitor performance and ensure that people are meeting their pledge. And if they do not, we will be able to begin proceedings to remove them from office without having to wait for the next election. In a nutshell, is
Thank you very much. Sister Lillian, we would like to know how are you distributed across the country? Because we have got like 290 constituencies, and then with thousands of wards across the country. So how is Tugutuke going actually to ensure that all those voters, now we are having 22 million voters, how is your message actually going to go across all those voters across the country?
Okay, I think just by the virtue of the fact that, first of all, it's young people who came together to establish this organization, we are actually just going to focus on the online media. So our campaign is basically meant to talk to the Kenyans through the online media, social media, any online outlet. We do also have what we are calling Tugutuke Assembly, and just like the way we have politicians, political candidates going for rallies out there, we have our online assembly whereby we will be hosting our rallies, where we'll be interacting with the Kenyans, talking to them about the issues, giving them a chance to hear them out, as well as also linking them to the candidates who have actually pledged to be answerable to the people. So that's where we're going to be doing most of our campaign.
Thank you very much. Before I go to Bwana Hillary, I'm going back to Elder, because he's actually he's a senior civil servant in Kenya. Or let's actually just stop it at that, and we'll definitely ask him what he has actually done, especially to the Kenyan society for over 40 years as an accountant. So, Bwana Kabeberi, you know, how do you ensure that the right candidates actually are the ones which you vouch for? So which criteria do you use to ensure that you tell the young people, you tell the old people, this is the right candidate? So do you have like a memorandum of understanding with the candidate, or what are your criteria to ensure that the right candidate is actually going to go to the county assembly or in the national parliament, or in parliament? Go ahead.
So, Ben, the right candidate is, first of all, somebody whose integrity is not in question. And in terms of vetting, that is really the principal vetting area, that the candidate does not have any issues with integrity, that candidate is not currently under investigation by the various investigating bodies, that candidate is not in court charged with any form of crime. As you know, our laws have been somewhat messed up about, so that the Electoral Commission, IEBC, is unable to bar such candidates from election, provided they have not finished the appeal process. So we have a situation where the Director of Prosecution and the Anti-Corruption Authority tell IEBC this person has questions that he needs to answer, and IEBC said the law allows me to let him run for the election. What we are saying is that the public here now has to make that decision by not agreeing to vote for that person. So the first step in terms of vetting candidates is checking whether they have any area that brings to question the integrity. And there are enough sources for that. The Anti-Corruption have published their list, the DPP has their list, and we have an organization called Red Card, which has identified any people who are in that sort of situation where their integrity is in question. The second and most important criteria is that the candidate agrees to publicly pledge in writing to be a representative of the people, to represent the wishes, the views, the desires of the people who vote for them, and that they will continuously, I think we have indicated 3 times in a year, hold formal meetings and discussions with their constituency to see what it is that their constituency are saying, to report back on what activities they have been up to in Parliament, what they have been saying in Parliament, and what the voters, the constituents would like said in Parliament about the various issues that happen in Parliament. So any candidate who agrees to sign this pledge, and we have prepared the pledge, it's available, it's visible, it is publicly available to anybody to see, then that becomes a candidate who we call a kuwajibika candidate. Kuwajibika is accountability. And this person has agreed to be accountable to the people. Then it's also important to note that we find that it is not possible for a candidate or an MP or representative to truly be accountable, answerable to the people directly if that person belongs to a political party. Because the first loyalty would be to that political party. And if there's a question in Parliament on which the party has a stand, this person cannot vote against the party without risking losing their parliamentary seat. So it happens then that our candidates will be independent candidates in this election. But we think that this is only going to be for this particular election because we anticipate that in the next 5 years or so, there will be sufficient reform in our political system, in our democratic system, that will reestablish the political parties as an adequate avenue, as adequate representation of the people to Parliament and to parliamentarians. I do remember, though, Ben, a quote, I can't remember from who, I think it was Friedman, who said that good politics is not just about getting the right people to do the right thing. It is also about getting the wrong people and the right people to do the right thing with punishment for doing the wrong thing. And here what we are saying is that if you become one of our candidates and you do the wrong thing when you are elected, we'll punish you by having you removed from the House during your term.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You'll get a few other minutes actually to elaborate a little bit further. But right now, let me bring in a politician now. Let him also be in the house and let us hear his voice. So our first question to Bwana Hilary Teller. What are your thoughts about the current political climate in Kenya?
Thank you very much, Engineer Omeri. Thank you, Lillian and David, for your input. So whereas I may currently be posed as a politician, standing in as the ODM senatorial candidate for Busia County, allow me to just give you a background. I have a law degree from the University of Nairobi, an MSc in logistics from University of Liverpool, and an MBA from USIU. So by and large, my bread and butter has been the law as it is. If you were to, for instance, look at the social contract theory as espoused by Jean-Jacques Rousseau in his book, The Social Contract in 1762. If you're to go and look at the nascency of the current day democracy, it postulates that people will cede some of their authority, some of their ability to be independent to a central body, which is called the government. And by them doing that, they expect that the government will be able to go around and cater for each and every party, each and every person within the society, and they reclaim a certain level of authority. Their dominion will only be left within their familial status, but for a greater bit of society. They expect that the taxes that will actually be collected on behalf of the society will be able to go around and ensure that there will be a very vibrant agricultural, health, educational sort of system. Infrastructure will actually be executed and whatnot. So it sounds very great on paper. Now, if we're to look at the 2010 constitution that was actualized in 2013, it now brings in devolution where you forget about this quote-unquote centralized sort of animal that was based in Nairobi, but you then split it out into 47 sort of small units across the counties that can execute. Health, for instance, is a fully devolved function that previously, before 2013, was done centrally. Now, if you were to look at the 2010 constitution, in fact in 2013 as well, there are various requirements where under the social contract, if you are a citizen of Kenya, you are actually expected by law to participate in the entire process that will go on and look at the thematic issues that is hurting your community, be able to prioritize areas of improvement right from the ward level and ensure that in each and every financial year at the county level, whether it's health, education, whether it's agriculture, infrastructure, your voice is heard. Now, I think there are very few counties in Kenya that have been able to execute that. Very few people actually understand they, by virtue of the fact that they are citizens of Kenya, they have a right to ensure that each and every county executes the mandate that will allow the communities in those particular counties to be able to thrive. By and large, if you have to look at some of the sort of projects that have been executed in the last 9 years, a bulk of them, and I dare say, without a fear of contradiction, may be considered very illegal because pounds of money or dollars of money have actually been placed into projects that have not fully been endorsed by the communities. And as we look at the third sort of election from the time the new constitution actually placed on looking at devolution, or what you call ugatuzi in Swahili, we need to be very clear on the fact that one, we may potentially have not fully understood or appreciated the roles that each and every leader was given the first two dispensations. But on the third strike, we need to be very clear about what the expectation is for the member of the county assembly, very clear about what the expectation is on the role of the member of parliament, extremely lucidly clear on the basic minimum requirement we expect to measure each and every governor, senator, and women rep. Those are the three roles that you have at the county front. And then most importantly, be able to actually understand how do you then actually allow the presidency, us status in Nairobi, to ensure, and parliament and the senate, ensure that we can actually go around and have incremental bits. So it's good we've actually gotten a constitution that looks great on paper, but the execution will require a lot of civic education, a lot of honest soul searching. I like the fact that there is a platform that Madam Lillian and David have actually placed on. And they've mentioned, or rather, my senior David has mentioned, that it's something that would potentially be looking at trying to execute or to hold the independent candidates accountable as a first step. But whereas they've given 5 years to expect that the various political parties in Kenya will pick it up, I actually honestly believe that this is something that can actually be placed in to hold even the people within the various political parties, myself included, to have the level of decency and the level of the ability to execute for the people right from the get-go. Because the Latin maxim says, Vox populi, vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God. Leadership is not something that is intrinsically decided by a person. There's got to be an electoral process that allows the people to exercise their rights to be able to elect people. But I think one of the biggest issues that we've been having in Africa is post the election, you already go and elect someone unanimously. What responsibility do they have? One, to the community. Two, on a level of feedback to ensure that the same community is kept abreast on any issues that are, not potentially moving on through. And most importantly, do we have the transformative sort of energy to be able to ensure that if it's not working, we'll try and fight tooth and nail? Because at the end of the day, Vox populi, vox Dei, the voice of the people is the voice of God. We are not looking at getting into leadership for our own interest, but to try and serve the people.
Thank you very much, Banaitela. Now, I would like our sister to come back and then tell us exactly how Tugutuke is currently involved seriously to ensure that the right candidates. This question, I'm actually repeating it because our brother has answered it, Bwana David Kabeberi. But we would like to get the structures now, how your structures are really arranged or aligned to ensure that if I'm corrupt or if I'm actually accused in a court of law, the candidate himself can actually be accountable in all situations. From your argument, or from the argument which I heard David say, you are at least leaning towards independence. I'm not pretty sure about that one. That's something I really want to get clarification from you guys. So are you really leaning toward independence, or you're actually cutting across all the board? Sister Lillian?
Okay. So thank you for that question. So let me just clarify, also just picking up from what Hillary said. He made some very good points about, just what he thinks that should be done and all the the mechanisms that could be in place to keep candidates accountable and all that. But we as Tugutuke kind of feel that, and why we are talking about independent candidates is because independent candidates are, by the nature of their name, independent. So they are not tied to their party, the party owners or the party rules. So they are more likely to represent what the people want. Unlike maybe candidates who are within a party system, because even with good intentions, and we've seen this happening in the past before, whereby people who you think that were going to represent the people actually get into power and completely forget about their responsibilities and why they were voted. They forget about their people. They don't show up back home to just ensure that things are working. So that is why we feel that we don't necessarily are targeting candidates in political parties, because we may be fighting a war that we may not succeed. But if we are working with independent candidates, it makes more sense. And then just to answer your question on how are we to make people answerable, because when you talk about accountability also, is all about, reporting to the people and, about what you've been doing in the constituency, but more so in terms of lawmaking. Like, what are you doing in parliament? Are you literally representing the people in parliament? Are you fighting for policies and things like that? But they will be signing a document, which is now what we are calling the pledge, which is actually a legally binding document. So you find that with independent candidates, it may be easier for them to agree to sign a document because they have no affiliation to any political party, and easier for us to possibly maybe account for in the beginning. So with that legally binding document, which they sign publicly and will be there on our online collaterals, our website, it'll be there for public information throughout. That should work, and that's how we believe that it should work. And we are looking for candidates across the 47 counties. Independent candidates across the 47 counties. And we will also have a monitoring in the council. We do have a monitoring and evaluation member committee that is going to be charged full-time from the elections. Once a candidate has gone into office, they will be monitored, like every single thing that they do, and we will then be reporting back to the people through our online assembly, which I had mentioned earlier. And the candidates will also be required, because they've signed the pledge, which actually they have agreed to participate in that capacity. They will be coming to the online assembly every, like 3 times a year, and that is where they will meet with the people and they'll be reporting back to the people. So the monitoring committee will be just ensuring that even if candidates do not come to the online assembly to speak to the people, we will still be able to report back to the people who voted them in. So that's basically the structure and the mechanism by which we are planning to pursue that or implement that.
Okay, thank you, Sister Lillian, for that great answer. Now we are having this question again. Now going to Bwana Hilary Itela. What are the ramifications of Martha Karua and Rigathi Gachagua as running mates on the political stage as of today? I know you might be a little bit biased, but I want you to get a very a broad opinion. I don't want you actually to be so much onto the ODM or the Azimio side. Just be very open and actually let Kenyans know from your own perspective, because we'll be bringing the UDA people also here to give their views. Go ahead, Bwana Itela.
No worries, Bwana Mweri. Anyone who knows me will tell you I'm a very objective person, which is very so I will move on through the same objectivity that you've created the platform for.
Sure.
Now, I think we need to just be very clear about the reality that we have in East Africa currently, before we look at the micro-politics environment in Kenya. If we're to look at Tanzania currently right now, the president of Tanzania is a female, Samia Suluhu from Zanzibar. and the deputy president is from the mainland. All right. But to look at Uganda right now, the president is Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, and the vice president of Uganda is Jessica Leku, former general in the Ugandan military, female. But to look currently into what we have current as a disposition in Rwanda, Kagame, Paul Kagame, he is the president. If you check his deputy, it is actually a female. Check into Burundi, the same case moves on through. So one thing that we need to be very clear on, Kenya is particularly always looked upon as the paradigm of democracy and inclusion in East Africa. The fact that close to 60 years after independence, we still have not been able to have a president or a deputy president whose female is a bit of an issue. Now, this is where maybe my Azimio moves on through. I would have actually preferred a situation whereby, because we actually know the foreigners are in Azimio in Kenya Kwanza, or rather UDA, were both male. I would have actually fancied a situation whereby the UDA side of the political divide would have also looked at a female person as being part and parcel of the running mate. And I'm not saying it because we, one, believe that the female gender are perhaps weaker. They have actually done a lot over the last 60 years. They've actually been able to earn their place at the table. And it troubles me that Uganda have had the ability to go around and appoint a female deputy president ahead of Kenya. It troubles me that the same case has actually happened in Tanzania, where they've not even appointed a deputy president, but a president who's actually female. And the same situation in Rwanda and Burundi. So, and I'm not placing any diplomatic sort of, nuance or trying to unleash anything else. I would have loved in this particular election to have either the forerunner or the running mate being female. It's only happened from the Azimio side. I think to be able to go and actually appreciate that there's been a democratic thriving space in East Africa, at the very least, Kenya being looked upon as a paradigm of the democratic space, that should have been something that had been done. Having said that, however, we move on through to actually understand what the intricacies are with the actual people being given the mandate. I think integrity is something that has been spoken about. I think my senior, Bwana Kabeberi and Lila, have spoken about it. The fact that IBC would potentially clear you does not necessarily mean that if there's been any other skeletons that have been placed in the background, may not necessarily come to protect you. At the depth of everything, anyone who seeks a mandate to lead anyone, if not at a ward level, at a constituency level, a county level, or even a country level in Kenya, should be able to realize that, one, leadership should not be for self-serving purposes. It should be to actually allow the community to thrive. It's the ability for you as a person who's been entrenched in the community to allow the community to be able to tap into your experience, your great networks, and most importantly, your humility and ability to be able to go around and transform various issues. Now, if I was to compare Kenyan election politics today and maybe 20 years ago, a lot has changed. We're still not in there, but we need to be able to ensure that, one, come 9th of August, which is about 71 days away from today, we're not necessarily looking at the handouts, but we're looking at transformative change. People actually are willing to be held accountable. People are willing to be asked tough questions. Not everyone loves tough questions, but if you are getting to the realm of leadership, you've got to be able to be as vulnerable enough to be asked tough questions, but most importantly, as hardworking enough to be able to deliver what the people actually mentioned. So on that particular point, I hope I've rested my case and been very succinct. I try to be as objective as possible, and I'll continue being as objective as I possibly can be.
Thank you very much for being honest. That is a great observation, and we appreciate that, because that is where we are here. And I don't also want to be accused by Tugutuke. I want to be on the same. I want to be on the safe page. I mean, okay. Now, Bwana Kabeberi.
I'll just add only one thing before we proceed. Jessica Lepu, the Ugandan vice president, and I come from the same clan. When the people actually demarcating colonial boundaries, they made Kenya and Uganda in one area. So I'm a Teso from Kenya, there's a Teso from Uganda, but Jessica is ideally, for all intents and purposes, my cousin. So I was not necessarily trying to say that because she's my cousin, but I was trying to show what's happening on the other side of the border. It's just by coincidence she's actually from the same clan as I am.
Thank you very much. Bwana David, same question, please. Can you give your insight? Bwana David, are you here? Okay, Bwana David. Okay, we lost Bwana David. Okay, go ahead, Sister Lillian, as we wait for Bwana David.
Yeah, okay. So basically, for me, I would also want to, I mean, in terms of just thinking about the political space right now, what we see is, I mean, what I think is important, and as much as people are running and campaigning, Kenyans should also just think about, like, in terms of the running mate, the president and the running mate, that running mate, whoever they choose, yeah, because now you're talking about, let's say, Martha and Rigathi. What Kenyans should be thinking about should not really be Azimio or UDA. It should be more so who is the person who has the criteria to be deputy president. Okay, so criteria in the sense that you're imagining that should anything happen to the president in future, God forbid, whoever the incoming president, the deputy is the person who is going to be president, whether it's for a short period of time. I mean, we saw that happen when there was a time when Uhuru had left the country and DP had, yeah. So the deputy, as much as we may just be trying to vote parties and things like that, we also have to critically think who is the right person in case of anything. Right after elections, the deputy will be the president. So are we willing to have that person, the running mate, as our president? So I think that is what we should be focusing on, more than just looking at parties and history and things like that. I mean, so that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sister Lillian. Now, Bwana Hillary, what role do you think the diaspora community should play in ending tribal animosity and personality-based politics? Recently, we had Honorable Governor Oparanya and Governor Ngwai. We also had the deputy president in the diaspora. But from our own observation, because we are here, we saw that, I mean, there are some tribal problems we still have, even in the diaspora. So what do you think the diaspora community, actually, how do you think the diaspora community should behave, or what role should they actually play to ensure that tribalism is not actually be a problem in the current political formations in Kenya?
Thank you, Engineer. I think before I answer your question, I'll maybe want to react to one of the sentiments that my sister Lillian had mentioned, where she spoke about the need to try and move away from the party ideals and politicking that we potentially had in Kenya for the last 20 years. So I'll be very brutally honest. If you look at the sort of policies that parties have in Kenya, and I'm not trying to go around and assuage this because I'm a member of ODM, very few parties actually have a principle that they rely on now. If you look at the ODM constitution, for instance, they look at a social democratic space where they're trying to get people to go around and be included in the ability for them to unlock the value that they have. I have not been able to have a similar sort of understanding on what the other parties are, but that is a stepping stone. To be able to actually get into a full and mature democracy, you need to be able to have parties that have been able to go around, create a certain understanding of what their ideals are, and they go around and get people to understand that their manifestos are not going to be changed or fixated by the political sector. That's the first bit. The second bit, on the tribalism bit, I do not want to call it tribalism, I call it ethnicism. And this is something that we actually were taught a couple of decades ago within the lecture halls, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that it actually has a bit of value. And ethnicism has got two sides. There is positive and negative ethnicism. Now, ethnicism, if you're to go around and look at it as a potential area to try and unlock value in a community, it's about being able to actually get the people who've got the right fit of skill sets, the right fit of resources to be able to unlock value. Unfortunately, in Kenya, we utilize it solely to an understanding whereby if you're from an area, I'll only be able to give a job to you and that kind of stuff. I've had the chance to go to school in the UK, I've had a chance to work in Uganda, and I've had a chance to work in South Africa, where I've actually gotten been able to get an understanding and interaction and exposure to people who have been domiciled out of Kenya to be able to move on through. Now, ethnicism, in its stricter sense, is not negative. and I'll repeat it. Ethnicism is not negative. There's something called positive ethnicism now. And I'll explain that. If you're in Uganda and you're running a business, the fact that you are all Kenyan is a uniting factor. Have that 100%, people come, they do not care whether you're coming from central Kenya, the coast, or western province. If you are in the UK and all of a sudden people are looking at trying to look at an African who can actually create a bit of value, it doesn't matter if you're Nigerian, Kenyan, Zimbabwean, wherever you're from, Niger, etc., they'll actually rally behind you. Unfortunately, when we get into our own country units, it now becomes an issue of who speaks Kikuyu better than I do, who speaks Embu better than I do, or who speaks Meru better than I do. We have the ability to become very pragmatic and very cohesive when we look at ourselves in a country unit level or a continental level. But for some reason, for issues that may be petty, if not non-existent, we don't realize that. First and foremost, the same Hillary who was in the UK or in South Africa or in Uganda sees the same Hillary here. Forget about the fact that he comes in from Lucia, or he potentially would be aligned to a political party that you may not necessarily agree on to. At the end of the day, still the same Hillary. So the positive ethnicism has to be transcended right from the ability to look at just your tribal affiliation in the country or your regional affiliation, but to the African affiliation, which is something that I am actually saying is happening to my children. I've got very young children who are currently getting into the CBC program, and it's something that I have been able to see that teachers are proactively trying to go and execute. I remember for the longest time, it did not matter when I was in UK doing my master's. It didn't matter whether it was Kenyan, or Zimbabwean, or Nigerian, or Sierra Leone. The fact that I was African allowed anyone to drop anything that they needed to at any moment in time and come to my rescue. But for some reason, as Kenyans, we are fixated with the tribal card. And I say, move the tribal card of the way, understand how is it that I can actually go and execute a mandate when we actually believe we're from Africa or from East Africa. But then all of a sudden, because I come from a different village, and it gets really petty. I come from the Teso community in Kenya, for instance. We've got two constituencies in Busia, Teso South and Teso North. It's absurd that someone from Teso North will actually find it hard to try and assist or reach out to someone from Teso South. We speak the same language, for crying out loud. We've got the same clan system. But positive ethnicity has to be placed to a certain understanding whereby we're not necessarily trying to delineate people, but we're trying to look at the strength to be able to execute. And I think that's a conundrum that we have a responsibility to be able to execute and most importantly, bring people together. I hope I've been able to answer the questions, but I'm more than happy to answer to any sort of reflection that will come on through.
Thank you very much. Bwana David, we lost you, but thank you. You've come back. So there's a question here we would like you to tackle. In your view, what's the authenticity of the party formations in Kenya? We've got the Azimio, we've got the, how do I call it? We've got the Kenya Kwanza Alliance. And what do you think those political formations actually represent? Do they represent the views of Kenyans? Or basically some of the parties are there for their own political interest, especially the leadership and all that? So go ahead, Bwana David.
Thank you, Ben. May I just make a quick comment on the question around the running mates?
Go ahead.
My network ran away just when I had this really hot moment.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
But I wanted to add to what Hillary said, but by pointing out that all the principal candidates, and there are probably going to be about 14 for president, and there are going to be candidates for the seat of governor in 47 counties. So there are a lot of people who are nominating running mates that will be their deputies. And what we really would like to remind all of them is that the principal role of the running mate who becomes a deputy is literally for this person to replace them, to replace that president or to replace that governor, should for some reason the president or governor leave office.
Of which we have seen actually recently. Yeah, we saw that.
And it happens, yes.
Yes.
So it means then that the person who you are nominating as your running mate is somebody who you consider to be either as good or a better president than you yourself are going to be. Because that's what you are telling us when you nominate this person. You are saying, if I were to go, this is the person who will be the president or the governor and will do as good a job or better if I'm gone. And that is something which, because the voters are not involved really in determining who your running mate is, that decision the voters can only make at the ballot box on the voting day. So when you are nominating your running mate, pay some real attention to it. There may be somebody who will be able to bring you votes from that section of the country or from that section of the county, or they look nice because maybe they have the money, things like that. But you must eventually ask yourself, is this somebody who will be as good a governor or president as I will be? And I think that you had only asked about the two particular ones, but I think that question is something which nearly probably about 100 candidates who are running for president and governor should keep in mind. So thank you for that, allowing me to say that. So in my view on the authenticity of current political formations, if Ben, I can be brutal, and Hillary for the brutality, but I
Go
actually
ahead.
think
Yes.
it is my view that there are no political formations in Kenya which have anything to do with the public, anything to do with the voters, anything to do with serving the interests of Kenyans. They have, if you see the Constitution of Kenya, the 2010 Constitution, that Constitution anticipated that the power, the donation of power, in fact, Hillary talked about, concentrating the power and authority into a group called the government. That Constitution anticipated that we would be represented as a people to that government through political parties. And it made very specific provisions to enable us create political parties that are strong democratic organizations, represent the interests of the people, different ideologies, different thinking, able to nominate people to go to parliament, to senate, to even president, to represent that ideology, that common ideology that we have. Unfortunately, the very same people who were in charge of implementing this constitution actually, first of all, did not take it to its logical completion in terms of the implementation, and in some cases changed the constitution and the law to allow the parties to become very weak organizations. One of the key laws or rules that was in the constitution was stating that state officers, people who are public officers, MPs, cabinet secretaries, PSs, people who are in government and who are state officers, should not be officials of a political party. That is so that the political party is available to hold those people accountable. That law was changed. There's a small little change there which allowed MPs and senators and elected officials to be members, to be officials of a political party, which meant now you couldn't separate really the political party from the people in parliament. And in the case of one political party, I don't mind naming it, Jubilee, they even had a cabinet secretary as their secretary general, as the most senior official. So today, you cannot separate the political parties from parliamentarians. And we have eventually come to a place where we are now, where political parties actually, I don't know if anybody will disagree with me, but they belong to individuals. They are personal vessels. We don't see how even the decisions are made. They don't involve the people. How did we get into a place where certain parties form a coalition? They never ask the members. In fact, do they even know who the members are? In my opinion, Ben, for real, all the political parties or formations are really all individually motivated organizations created, now being used for personal movement. I mean, this hula baloo we have seen with the gentleman from Kambani, Kalonzo Musyoka. You know, you are asking yourself, where are the people in this conversation? Where are the voters? Yeah, in all these political parties, Ben, for a long time, for 2 years, the registrar of political parties has kept a register of members. Nobody knows how they became members of parties. You know, I found myself to be a member of Jubilee. I have never joined Jubilee. You know, if you ask Hillary, he was probably a member of ANC. He has never joined. It's just the other the registrar, the registrar of political parties was saying, yes, there was a mistake. Somehow people were put in the wrong party, so now they were desperately removing 50,000 corrections per day. Where did this error come from, and who has been taken to account for it? I mean, that's somebody who's buggered up with the most important register in the country. And I haven't heard, I don't know if you've heard Hillary, but I haven't heard anybody being prosecuted for mucking about with the register. Ben, you will also find that in the last 2 years, we have actually been forming regional parties, forming them, not stealing them, forming them. We have formed one in Hillary's Western province there, the name is called what, DAP. And it is
DAP, it sounds like fertilizer. Fertilizer.
It's a regional party. It is formed as regional. The other one was formed in Northeastern as a party for Northeastern. The law says very clearly you cannot form a party that is regional or tribal. But there we are. We now have most of the parties in Azimio are actually, you know, parties of that sort. You know, you see people standing up on stage there saying my party has joined, and you're wondering, so where did this party come from? Who are the people in this party? The other day, there's a gentleman who's currently the speaker of the assembly. He was made party leader of DP, I think, DP, Democratic Party. Then one day, on his very own, he walked and went to join another coalition, and his members asked him, where? Surely, how have you gone? You haven't even asked us. So they were in court. Now, in court, having a court case, saying that guy's movement to I think he joined Kenya Kwanza, yeah, that one, without asking anybody, not even the officials in the party. Now, you tell me that these parties are bodies which are representing individuals. The only thing I'm happy about is because Hillary here is in ODM, but he has agreed.
Hillary, are you accepting? Are you accepting what Bwana David Kabebeli is saying?
No, I'll tell you one thing. I think, and I've known David for a while, and the one thing I agree or I appreciate about David is his brutal honesty. And what he's actually mentioned perhaps talks towards this level of democratic space that we've been able to hit in Kenya. I was speaking to someone about 2 or 3 weeks ago in Ghana. If you're looking at Ghana's political face, for instance, there's a very clear cut between people who call themselves social democrats, people call themselves communists, and people call themselves capitalists. And if you look at the last 3 Ghanaian elections, it's actually been an election that has been moved to each and every one of those particular parties. So my current party is ODM. ODM portend, they espouse the ability to be social democrats. Right from the constitution, right from how they actually go around and look at the ability to enjoin the community to move on through. Many people have not been able to fully understand the clarion call for 6-piece voting. As a social democrat, they tell you, if you actually then vote in a senator or a member of parliament or a women's rep, etc., you then create, pegged up on the proportion that is meant to be calculated, the ability to have a couple more of like-minded people to get into that particular play. I will not hide from the fact that what David has said is true. You can have it in paper, but very few people espouse or align themselves with that school of thought. If you have to, for instance, look at the current ODM constitution and maybe compare with 1997 when we had a party called Social Democratic Party that had Charity Ngilu and Anyang and James Oronga at the time, 90 if not 95% of what SDB espoused in 1997 is what the constitution of ODM currently is. So, do we actually have a system of parties that actually believe in a certain level of alignment? I can talk about the party that I'm in right now, ODM. There is a certain level of alignment. I'm not in there just because of the popularity, but I actually believe it can actually make a certain level of change. Pegged up on my limited experience in business and pegged up on what I know about, the social, economic, political space. However, to hit back onto what Bwana Kabeberi said, we have more of those entities that can actually go around and coalesce people so that we now start talking about politics, not pegged on ethnicity, but pegged up on ideals. We still have a long way to go. Ghana, I dare say, is millions of light years ahead of us. We're not too far off, but I believe that if we were to go around and look at, just understand the thematic areas that we are in and allow the parties to move away from being, regional or tribal and to actually get to issue-based, we'd actually be in a better space. 2002, after the late President Moi was leaving from power, Kenya was actually voted the most optimistic country in the entire world because they expected some nascency of new leadership to be able to move on through. However, the expectation alone cannot go around and actually make you a very happy person. You've got to be able to be grounded on a certain level of fundamental principles that can spell to the next bit. It's like expecting, and I'm sorry to use this example, you and your wife expecting a child. But expecting a child because you want to fill the house, or you expecting a child because you want to go around and create a certain level of excellence. As Kenyans, we should be able to have that expectation from children within our political sort of space, not only just to fill the house, but to create change. Creating the change is where we need to actually get the impetus to move to the next level.
Thank you. Oh yes. Thank you for your input, Bwana Hillary. But before I let you, before we go to our sister Lillian, I would love to honestly also ask you an honest question from our end here, because one of our viewers actually wants to get a very straightforward answer that you also had issues when you were doing the nominations, and that's why we had a huge number of independents, especially from the ODM stronghold. So they are basically buying that idea from Bwana David that we had some shambolic elections in ODM. So what's your reaction on that?
My reaction would be very simple, and it's actually in the public purview. We're not going to run away from it. That indeed in some areas elections were done. Like Busia was one of the areas where ODM held the elections. All right. In some areas like Homa Bay or Nairobi or Kisumu, there was a negotiated democratic sort of space to go around and deal with it. However, getting back onto the mix of things, if you're to look at the structures and the constitutions that various political parties have, they have the ability to go around and place each and every member who seeks to have an electoral position onto an outright by-election. That is an option that every party has. And I'm not so certain that it is only unique to ODM. I'm certain that it's something that is also available to other parties. Number two, you have the ability to look at opinion polls as opposed to perhaps stating or rather getting yourself into potential elections that can actually go around and fracture a community. You can look at getting a sample survey of opinion leaders and understanding what the position is, which is something that can also be placed up. So one, you have the ability to go into full outright nominations. Two, you have the ability to look at opinion polls to be able to understand where the people's mandate currently lies. Or three, you could then decide that in a potential situation like Azimio, where you've actually got zones that are not enough, you say that this is an area where you already have an incumbent leader from this party. And we actually honestly believe, pegged up on an honest understanding, that the next leader in this particular area would more or less come from this particular party and zone it out. So democracy has the ability to look at various ways of executing. It's not always that the ballot would be the only way to go around and agree or get to that particular limitation or to that agreement point. And it sounds very, very rough, but even when you're joining any organization, any party, I think it always helps to look at the rules and regulations, because a bulk of the people may potentially have gotten themselves feeling a bit aggrandized or potentially feeling that they've been served injustice, may not have read that. But these are actually roles, these are actually rules that have been given into various political parties, and in crystal clear, it's not something that was potentially just hijacked for them. People may not have actually had a chance to have a look at them. The country that I come from, for instance, Busia, in that there someone to go around and check them. And it will shock you, if not perhaps get you thinking. In Nairobi County, for instance, by the time Nairobi County was saying that they thought that Tim Wanyonyi was good enough to run for the ODM ticket, there was absolutely no election. And that's why Tim Wanyonyi found it very difficult to actually appreciate the fact that he's being told, we think you're popular, but we zone Nairobi as a Jubilee area, go back as Westlands MP. There was no election done. Mombasa, no election done. Nakuru, no election done. Busia, there was an election done. Okay. Where Paul Nyongesa Otuoma won that particular gubernatorial against the incumbent women rep Florence Mwikali Mutua. Okay. So, in fact, let's tell fellows, when people are looking at ODM in the shambolic beat and saying the election not done, Busia was the only county where ODM conducted elections. In the words of Swalem Doi, tafakari ya babu. So we're in a very good democracy. Yes. Like I said, the various areas look at, but Busia, for instance, look at an ODM perspective as a standalone, Busia is a place where elections were actually held, where people actually went and committed themselves from 8 o'clock till 6 p.m. to go around and pick the leaders that they thought they believed in.
Thank you. Bwana David, do you have...
David? Not Kisumu.
Okay, not Kisumu. Okay, those are your own opinion. I mean, let's ask...
No.
Let's get an independent view from Bwana David.
I really don't want to comment on the actual elections, but I want to tie that question to the previous one.
Yes.
And you know, all the parties, all the parties or formations or coalitions had a whole number of candidates for seats. You know, same as in the previous year, we had 15,000 candidates running, and many in the primaries were not able to get elected. What concerns me the most, Ben and Hillary, is the promise by the party leaders to those people who failed to get nomination. They were promised, in the case of ODM, I think even the leader was very specific about the number of government jobs that are available, which these guys who did not get nomination could be considered for. Jubilee, the same thing. And, you know, on national TV, somebody is telling the candidates, you guys don't worry if you're not taken, because, you know, government has jobs. And he himself says, even I myself didn't get nominated last time, and I got a government job, and I earn more than what you earn as an MP. Let me rest my case there.
Thank you very much. Sister Lillian, you've been quiet for so long, so you're enjoying the discussion. Please come in.
I think I'm just going to, just echoing what David has said. I mean, the political parties as they are now, it's not as transparent as we'd hoped for it to be. And I think during this electioneering period, especially when you look at it in terms of campaigns and how people are campaigning and when they're campaigning and campaign expenditure and things like that, the languages that people are using on the campaigns. And you find that even resource-wise, you may find that one candidate on the campaign trail is tagging along with bodyguards and, you know, looking very government-like and influencing just by their appearance. You know, that, you know, they have bodyguards and everything, then they already look popular. They already look like they're going to win. Or people publicly supporting. I mean, it's okay to support, it's our democratic right, but there's a way that we are being influenced by, those campaigns, the way they are being done, and I'm not sure that that's the right way. So in as much as we are being democratic, the people need to know that don't get influenced by, you know, all that. And just to touch on what Hillary had talked about tribalism, and I think it's important to note that it's actually the politicians who cause the tribalism. I mean, the question we should be asking is are we really a tribal nation? You know, you made a very good point that there's positive ethnicity and everything. But if we think about it, before the colonialists came we were all independent nations, the Luo, the Luya, the Kikuyu, and all that. We were run by paramount chiefs and everything, and we would report to the Queen in England. But then when the elections came, that changed. The Queen left Kenya, the British government left, and left the people here to rule. And that was part of the reason why now you find that there's tribalism and things like that, because now the politicians now use that history to convince us that we are tribal, but we are not tribal. Yeah, so just I think that's one thing that we should be very cognizant of, and we need to stop saying we are tribal, because we are not. It's our history, but it's not necessarily who we are. So the politicians need to be accountable for what they say on campaigns. And I mean, I guess I'm touching on to the next question on rule of law, to just uphold the rule of law.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's it.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the last question, actually, which you've almost actually touched on, do you think Martha's inclusion in Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance as the running mate has really jolted, has made a very serious impetus into Raila's presidency or presidential candidature? And as women, do you think women are really ready now to vote? I mean, you are an independent person. You give your own perspective based on what is actually happening on the ground. I know Bwana Hillary will be we like to hear that one. So can you go ahead? Go ahead.
I think I'm okay. First of all, let me clarify that I'm also here as as a citizen of Kenya. I'm representing the Tugutuke movement, and we are very non-partisan. And I don't want to influence anything, but yes, it is good that we have a female candidate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the only way to go. I would just prefer to stick to our issue
Go ahead.
and not appear like I'm endorsing anybody at this particular point in time, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I saw my brother Hillary was really yearning to hear. Oh yeah, let me hear this now. Now he has lost it. Very unfortunate.
Very honest. I know, Lillian, you're trying to...
Kabeberi, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead. No, he says Kabeberi has actually given you a nod. You know, he's a kind gentleman. He's a kind elder statesman. Go ahead, Bwana Hillary.
He's my senior.
Go ahead.
Now, guys, let's be very... And whereas I've been a resident of Nairobi and campaigning in Busia, which is my village area, I've spent a lot more time in Busia than Nairobi. Let's not even lie from the facts on the ground. Martha Karua's candidacy as the deputy president, potentially for the Azimio la Umoja presidential ticket, is a big deal. Let's not lie about it. We may potentially think that people in the village may not necessarily identify to leadership, particularly when it gets to a woman person. But I've actually met very many women's groups in Busia and Bungoma and Kakamega, and I can tell you it's a big deal. It is a big deal. Close to 6 years post-independence, people have actually been yearning for this particular bit. I already mentioned what our neighbors would do. Tanzania. No one would actually expect that Tanzania would actually have a female as it is right now. So I can tell you one thing. For a fact, from what I've been able to get on to, at least from Western Kenya perspective, Martha Karua's candidacy as a deputy president is actually causing ripples. It's a positive thing. However, as a father who actually has no sons and daughters, the constitution in 2010 that was effective in 2013 was looked at to try and actually ensure that then at that moment in time, potential population that had been kept into the back balance, which was a girl child, would be catered for. I'm a bit scared that the boy child may be kept off. And constitutionally, luckily, Kenyan constitution doesn't look at the girl child as taken. They say the gender that may potentially be affected by any bias. But I can tell you one thing, the girl child is thriving in Kenya. Martha Karua's candidacy is hotter than cupcakes from the bakery. I rest my case.
Thank you. Bwana David Kabeberi, do you think Rigathi Gachagua has made the DP to lose some votes in central Kenya from the newspapers we're actually reading and the videos, or I mean, not really movie, but the TV screens, we're actually seeing so many people complain or give views that Gachagua has actually made it so hard for the DP to consolidate his votes in central, because like a month ago, things were really great for the deputy president, especially in central Kenya. But now here comes in Martha Karua, Rigathi Gachagua. So what's your own opinion? What is your honest opinion on that particular issue?
Okay, well, again, I'm going to be Lillian here and not try to endorse any
yeah.
this candidate.
Go ahead.
But I will repeat what I said earlier about
yes.
running mates.
Yes.
When you nominate a running mate, you are saying to Kenya that this is a guy who is as good or better than me at the job of being president. So I can only hope that both Raila and Ruto thought about that question with enough gravity. But on the question of Martha, obviously, you can see it's made a big jolt in the campaign. But let's say from a Tukutuke point of view, we are saying that our constitution and what we want as Kenyans, what we would be wanting as Kenyans, is to get a good president, a good deputy, a good government, a good executive. But the person who ensures that those people are either taking this country forward, doing the right thing all the time, or getting out is Parliament. Because it is Parliament which will then be providing, allocating resources to this government, seeing whether they have spent it right. And Parliament, and both the assemblies, the Parliament and the County Assembly, have the ability, the responsibility, actually, not even ability, to remove the president, the deputy, and all state officers if they are not doing their job. So it comes to us that actually we have not been paying enough attention as voters to MPs, because we've been voting on the 6 piece or mostly on that 6 piece. It was 3 piece before. And we are saying, no, now guys, first of all, let's understand what these people's job is. And let's make them go and do their job, so that whether it is Raila who is elected with Martha, or whether it is Ruto who is elected with Rigathi, whether it is Kagame who is elected, because there are another 14 candidates, whoever it is, you cannot take us backwards. You can make as much promise as you want to make. You can promise us 6,000 shillings and 40 billion shillings and all this wonderful stuff that is being promised, but you cannot take us back beyond this level. And the only people who do that will be the members of Parliament. So I obviously they're going to have a hard time campaigning in the next two months or so. But we want to have a strong Parliament that is able to say to Martha, and don't forget, Martha is and she's even going to be the Minister for Constitutional Affairs. A lot of these conditions, a lot of these agreements are fairly, they're made on, we're all friends right now. In a year's time, what happens? I mean, we have seen it in the current administration. People are friends at the beginning and now towards the end, skizani tena.
Sure.
So let them fight there. Let them do their fighting if they have to. But please, let us have a Parliament that is going to stop that fight from affecting us. Our current Parliament, Ben.
Yes.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Just
go ahead.
One, our current Parliament.
Yes.
The members go around in their campaign talking about how the president has borrowed money, how the president has overborrowed. And somebody needs to ask them, boss, you are the members of Parliament. You approve the budget. You approve the expenditure. It is you who approve that we spend 9 trillion or whatever it is. Where does the president?
It's not new news.
Yeah, you should stop it. There at Parliament, say no. Borrowed enough, no more spending.
Yeah.
Today, we have borrowed. The other day, we borrowed 132 billion in 2 months. Where are the MPs? They are out there campaigning. Maybe they're campaigning there against Hillary.
and again, I mean, we saw that some of them try to sneak in some bill so that they could actually increase their packs. So, I mean, where does the president get all this money from? So that is a good point. Yeah, go ahead, Bwana
Yes.
David. Yeah.
So I think I've made the point that even yesterday's newspaper, we have a headline of former governor of Kiambu, Waitito, Babayao,
Yes.
amassing 2 billion shillings in 5 years' time.
Yes.
And we are investigating him. But I'm asking, you know, the way the law is, a governor cannot move even from one place to another without the approval of the county assembly.
Yes.
The way at first when this thing was used in the constitution, I thought, isn't this too tying down? But you know, a governor requires the assembly to do anything. Where was those members of assembly when this guy was taking 2 billion?
Sure.
And then they come and tell us, you know, all this stories. This is what we are saying. Honestly, the people have got to be able to call the governor of Kiamwangi and ask him, you need to be able to ask him, when you were all given 2 million shillings to go and vote for the BBI, who did you ask? Because you know, all the MCAs were given money to vote for the BBI to present view, because you know the MCAs are the closest to the people. So if we want to have a referendum and you want to ask the people, ask the MCAs. They went and they told the president, we will vote for this BBI thing if you give us 2 million bob. Is that not extortion? All of them.
All
2
of them.
million each.
Yeah.
And somehow,
Yes.
the government constitutional body called the Salaries Review Commission, which is a constitutional body, independent, was able to somehow agree to give these guys this money. And they told us it does not affect the budget. I am still working out from my 40 years of accounting how giving people 2 billion shillings does not affect the budget. But that's another story. I think I have digressed a bit.
Thank you very much. Because of time, we'll definitely take only 2 more questions, and then you guys will have your closing statement. So, is the rule of law being applied during this particular electioneering period? We've got so many laws, especially in our in the 2010 Constitution, which guides our elections. But do you believe that these laws are actually being followed? And how is this really going to affect in choosing our leaders who are going to present us for the next 5 years? Sister Lillian, go ahead.
So as I had started talking about it, in terms of the aspect of having a democratic election is about people observing the rule of law during the elections, yeah, and it's not just around election day alone. It's even before the elections. It's during the campaigns. It's how people are campaigning, how they're spending campaign funds. I mean, like, where is the campaign funds coming from? Are they bribing voters and things like that? Because obviously, if you're going to bribe voters, and that is part of your strategy, you're not observing the rule of law. Yeah. What languages are we using? We hear a lot of people on the campaign trail insulting each other, and nothing is happening. So I'm not sure that it's currently being observed, and it should be observed, because if we're not talking about issues and we are busy insulting each other, then it's going to be the same thing that it has been for the last couple of elections. And like we said, if we just continue doing the same thing that we've been doing for the last couple of elections, we're going to get the same kind of government. These are the same people who have been in government before, majority of them. And that's why for me, as like as a member of Tugutuke, I just wonder, and I think if we're going to be bringing the same people who are used to doing campaigns the same way, are we sure that really they don't observe the rule of law? Do we really think that it's we should be looking at them or listening to them? So those are my remarks. What resources are being used and how they're being used. Is there accountability in how those resources are being used? And where is that money coming from? Is it coming from taxpayer money, or how is the campaign money being raised?
Sure.
Those are the things that we need to consider. Even as we are voting, let's not just vote for people because we like them, but vote based on integrity and transparency. And those are the things that we need to look.
Sure. Thank you very much. Bwana Kabeberi, do you think these laws are being followed to their... I mean, are these laws actually being followed from your own perspective before we move on to the politician who is in the House?
You know, it's very unfortunate that we have these laws and they are not being implemented. The retinue of law that was created following the 2010 Constitution is a very comprehensive. You know, you can start with Chapter 6, you know, on integrity.
Sure.
Now that one, first of all, somebody went and diluted it by saying that you cannot be prevented from holding public office until you have completed all avenues of appeal in the case of being charged with a criminal offense. Now that actually, you know, it makes that law, it really dilutes it, because the objective of the Constitution and the thinking is that if you have a question around your integrity, a question around the work that you're doing, there's an investigation taking place around you, you really ought to step aside and allow that investigation to be finished before you can come back to that office. And that thing was considered, but how then we came around to this thing of allowing you to be in office until you finished your appeal. And appeals, you know, by the time you have been to the Court of Appeal and the East African Court of Appeal, we could be in Parliament for a whole term. The other areas that are, and Lillian alluded to this, is, you know, there are laws like the laws that regulate how much you can spend on an election, disclosing the amounts you spend, where you get the money from, so that people can see, well, are there likely to be conflicts of interest with where you have raised your money. That, again, parliamentarians have been able to suppress that law, literally suppress the law to their benefit, so that they don't have to account. You know, somehow we have to find a way where we are saying, if you are the subject of a law, you should not be the one who is actually creating that law or making it exist, because you take it to your advantage. It's not different from the question that you mentioned earlier, Ben, on salaries. You know, some things you need a separation of powers, and the Constitution does say, you know, we ought to be looking at separation of powers. But the elections, we are so focused on polling, on the actual polling, on the rules around polling, on the rules around counting, on the rules about, is it called what, this adding up? You know, everybody is focused on that, and yet the election is a whole bigger thing. There are candidates who have been campaigning for the last 4 years. Official campaign starts today, but there have been people campaigning for the last 4 years. What resources have they've been using? There are people in government using government seats and government resources to campaign for themselves or for others. I'm sure there's a law against that. The other day I saw the Electoral Commission saying if you use assets that are, you know, government assets to campaign, they will be confiscated. I guess you can do that with a car. How will you do that with a house? You know, there's some people who have a whole house. They have a, you know, how are you? We need to be saying we need to implement the laws that create the environment for a free and fair election.
Yeah, we actually saw. Yeah, let me also help you. We saw recently. One of our MPs actually from Western Kenya use a CDF, use a government car he had banners on that government car, and he is actually doing campaigns, and is not really bothered. I mean, what is really happening down there? I mean, it's really shocking. And the guy has not been arrested. I don't know whether he was arrested today. Go ahead, Bwana Kabeberi.
Yeah, but then what about when a presidential candidate shows up to a political rally in an army helicopter?
There we go. There we go. There we go.
You know, these are things which influence the election. You know, we want a free and fair election is one where people are not unduly influenced,
yes,
and they're not coerced.
Yes.
And all these laws, they need to apply from election to election. It's not just these last few days. I'm hoping that somebody, immediately upon the conclusion of this election, I'm hoping that somebody, and it could well be Hillary, will go and make a petition and say that, no, on the grounds of misuse of government resources, on grounds of campaigning outside of the official campaign hours, I petition for this election to be set aside. But we only petition on counting. I mean, some of us have it's for so long. Counting is a very small part of the.
Senior, I've had you. Challenge accepted. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Bwana Hillary. I know we'll okay, Bwana David, we'll continue having this engagement in the near future so that we can actually enlighten Kenyans, not only in the diaspora but back at home, because we have got thousands and thousands of Kenyans actually watching our programs, and part of this program is also funded by the One Voice Consortium, which are our partners. So we'll continue actually having this engagement and discussion for the betterment of our country in Kenya. And then, I don't know where Bwana Hillary went to. Hillary, we are going to ask you this particular question, but okay, go ahead. Okay, Bwana Hillary, this question now directly goes to you. Are you having any challenges when you are doing your campaigns, and do you believe and trust that some of your opponents are actually being treated fairly? They have said that Busia is a bedroom for the Azimio, but you are having some some competitors down there. So do you believe and trust that things are actually moving on in the right way? And you as an individual, because we have not actually given you even a minute to sell your agenda to the electorate, especially back, in Busia. So what's your opinion on that particular matter?
Thank you, Engineer. I think the one thing I'll be very clear on is that whereas Busia is a very competitive area, particularly when it comes into electoral elections and various positions, the one thing that I can state without any fear of doubt, without categorically stating that I'm going to go around and potentially step on Monto, is that there's been a very clear platform that people have been given to express themselves. That is very clear, number one. Number two, as to whether we have the ability to ensure that the elections will still remain fair, free, without any violence, I have my own doubts. Busia is a very vast county. It traverses 7 constituencies: Teso North, Teso South, Matayos, Nambale, Butula, Kunyula, and Budalani. The socioeconomic sort of perspective in every constituency differs. The ability for them to understand or appreciate the temperance or emotional quotient of our leader differs. But I've actually had the ability to go around and move across all the various constituencies. But tell me today, or rather for me to tell you, that I am certain without a shadow of doubt that there may potentially be no issue from the 9th of August, I'll be like. What we need to preach is the gospel of peace. I was in Budalani earlier on today when the MP, Raphael Angela, was taking his fitness to the IBC. Then he went to Bulemi, Budalani, which are the 3 major market centers in Budalani constituency. And he said something. If you were to look at it on very thin front, you have very little ability to choose who your neighbors are. Really. If you're in the village of Nairobi, very unlikely you will actually go choose who your neighbor will be. Whether they're Kamba, Kikuyu, Meru, James, Kokomo, it doesn't matter. However, the one thing that God has given the ability to choose is your friends. So, you have friends that have been running for the last 5-6 years. You've got neighbors you have no ability to choose, but they're still your neighbors. What do you live there? How do you live with your neighbors for the next 2 months? To ensure that, one, you still cordial, you have the ability to ensure that you don't unleash any violence. And after the election, still understand this is still your neighbors. God gives you the ability to choose only your friends. God doesn't give the ability to choose your family or your neighbors. Hata kama ni mtu amekunywa pombe na amelewa chakari, Mungu akisema ni familia yako, ni familia yako. Hata kama ni yule jirani atachoma kichwa ya panya ama kichwa ya grasshopper usiku, na unashangaa mbona unachoma kichwa ya grasshopper, that is your neighbor, deal with it. But the most important bit is how do you get the maturity to get the fellows to understand that yes, this is who I am. I cannot go around and choose who you are. I'm not judging who you are to be able to live. It's a deep thing. Finally, the 9th of August is coming. That is the election date for presidency, governor, senatorial, women rep, MP, MCA, etc., etc. This thing is not like that. No one should lose their lives to elect the person that they believe in. I tell that to anyone who actually claims that they support me. I claim that to anyone who claims that they support the party. No one should die for you to come across as being a real democratic person. It's not worth it. If you're to look at what I mentioned, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the social contract, and it's clearly stated in Latin. Vox populi, vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God. If the voice of the people has mentioned that XYZ is the governor, or the senator, or the MP, or the women rep, or the MCA, or the president, let us accept it and support it. Because in this same dispensation, there's a 5-year cycle whereby you can go around and change. But carrying a panga to get someone to lose their lives, etc., there is absolutely no reason for anyone to lose their life for political. I will not advocate for it. I am certain that very many fellows in Busia will not advocate for it. And let's ensure this is happening. The official political season has been opened up to you. Politics should not be your death sentence. Politics should be ability to unlock the value that you have to improve yourselves. I rest my case.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bwana Itela. That is, I believe it's sweet music to Sister Lillian's ears.
Yes, it definitely is. And allow me to just also wrap up by saying,
Yes.
and directing this to Kenyans directly, yeah. We need to rally behind, again, just coming from our point of view as Tugutuke, we need to rally behind political candidates who will be directly answerable to the people. Yeah, we've talked about this, but I just want to end with that and let that be the thing that is left in the minds of people as what I said, because if we cannot vote in people who are answerable, meaning that we can put them to account, we can deal with them legally if they do not do what they're supposed to do, then we are going to end up in yet another cycle. So, and we already know that right now, the political process for getting MPs, for example, to be accountable is very long and convoluted. The laws are there, but it can be a challenge even just for the basic mwananchi to try and make their leaders accountable. But that's why the movement is organizing, trying to organize Kenyans so that we can also help with that. Yeah. And finally, I guess I can just say, we just consider everyone's will. Everyone's will is paramount. Consider God's will, the candidate's will, and the future of our country. Okay, this is not about tribes. This is not about Kikuyus, Luyas, or Luos, or hustlers, or dynasties. If we vote the wrong way as citizens, if we don't vote for candidates who can be accountable, who agree legally to be accountable, then we will just, end up the way we have the last couple of years and very frustrated. Yeah. So that would be my parting shot.
Thank you very much, Elder Kabeberi, David Kabeberi. And again, when you are actually doing your parting shot or closing shot, what role do you want the diaspora also to play in Tugutuke to ensure that Kenyans actually get the right leaders and then there is no political upheavals or violence as they are going to do the election, or they are going to elect their leaders, and then the aftermath of the elections? Go ahead. You're muted. You're muted. But David, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. So, Ben, I
We have a network issue from your end, Bernard. David?
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I feel from. Yeah. So then the diaspora is very much a part of Kenya.
Yes.
The people in diaspora are Kenyans. They just happen to live elsewhere. And it's my belief that we should find a way for the diaspora to be a constituency within Kenya, to have a seat, even a seat in parliament, if you put it that way, with a constituency, whether it's 1 or 2 seats, I don't know, but we need to be able to have the diaspora come and argue with everybody else at the place where laws are made, at the place where incentives are given, at the place where allocate budget, at the place where we decide the future about the country, and that is in parliament. I think we've played for many years, we've sort of played with having a relationship with diaspora through the Ministry of Finance, through the Ministry of Treasury, with, small little things, but we never really, I think, have said, listen, get into this mix and be a part of it. Because if you had an MP in parliament and we were talking about allocation of incentives, for example, and what incentives do we give the diaspora? That is a question of law. That is decided in parliament. Let a diasporan MP argue with the rest of the MPs about those sort of movements and incentives. And I think if we had that, also then diaspora would feel really engaged. They would feel a greater ownership in the country, and we could be discussing deeper stuff like this question of answerable MPs. But for now, the diaspora obviously has a lot of influence amongst the Kenyans. We have people who are relatives in Kenya, and we would like to ask everybody in the diaspora, as all other Kenyans, to seriously consider what Lillian has said. Let's make our MPs, senators, MCAs answerable to us. We pay them. I don't know if you are familiar with the fact that we pay MPs close to 1.5 million shillings a month.
Oh, sure, I know that.
And
even more.
And yeah, because they then earn all sorts of allowances and all that. How do you pay somebody so much money and you don't actually ask them on a daily basis, really, what are you doing? What have you been up to? Why has this gone wrong? I think we have to talk to ourselves around that, the diaspora, amongst yourselves. And I think the most important thing, even for KDR TV, is if we all took a step back and said, let us do some civic education for ourselves and to the rest of the people. There's no urgency. The election is actually in 70 days' time. There's 2 months. We don't have to vote tomorrow. So in the next 1 month, if we said, let us educate ourselves about the real roles of parliament, the real roles of MCAs, the real roles of senators, and ask ourselves, if we understand what their roles is, then make them understand what we expect from them. And we take the next 1 month to do that. And then they can go out and campaign, knowing that they understand their role and we understand what their role is. 1 month is enough. We keep saying we need civic education. It's not a complicated thing. We just need to deal with the question of what are the roles of representatives for this time. After the election, we can then embark on a greater program of education and reform, and we need it. But this one time, let's educate our people. Let's use whatever resources we have to get our people understand the roles of MPs and and create the platform with which we can actually improve the country from after the election. Our program anticipates that by 2027 we'll be back to having elections and politics that's based on properly organized political parties. So from the diaspora, obviously at the end of the day, we are always short of resources. Right now, all our team are volunteers. They have done incredible work volunteering. They are very young people. I think Lillian is the next in age from me. Our youngest member is 19 years. The majority of our members are 25. So it's not a place where we have anybody that is backing us financially. And we expect and hope that we'll be able to get support directly from the Kenyan population on the programs that we have in terms of creating the online platform and managing it and ensuring that all Kenyans are able to access the assembly. So in time, the availability of resources is something that we can help each other with.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Lillian, you have something? Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, you're last.
Last thing. For anyone who'd like to just know more about us, we are online on tugutuke.co.ke, and we are also on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Tugutuke. On Facebook, we are Tugutuke Revolution. That may sound scary, but we are not scary at all. We just want to, change the leadership and make it better. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We got somebody actually backing you up from the background. That is perfectly okay. Don't worry about it. But thank you very much, Bwana David. Thank you very much, Bwana Itela. Till next time, may God bless you so that we can actually continue having this particular discussion. Till next time, may God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay,
God bless
thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you.